Now, I'm not a fan of online feminism at all. I'm not a fan of virtually any left-wing ideological position, in fact, for reasons that I'm sure you'll see in this video. I am for equality, though. That's why I'm an egalitarian, a word that seems to confuse a lot of people on the left, but it really just means that I'm in favor of actual equality for all, regardless of gender, race, creed, religion, sexual orientation, etc. If you're human, you get treated exactly the same, period. But that's not, regardless of what most third and fourth wave feminists want you to believe, what feminism is about. Steve Shives thinks that atheism and feminism ought to be good bed buddies. I disagree, and here's why. So let's look at why he thinks YouTube atheism needs feminism, and why I vehemently disagree.
Atheism and feminism are naturally complementary to one another. There is no human institution that has done so much in so many cultures across such a long period of time to hold women down as organized religion. For most of the history of civilization, the proposition that women ought to be treated equally to men was just as radical as the proposition that gods did not exist.
Well, we're already off to a bad start. Just because atheism and women's equality were once considered radical concepts, that doesn't make the two complementary. It just means that they share something in common. Atheism and Scientology were once both considered radical concepts. I don't think anybody's going to argue that atheism and Scientology are complementary ideas. To be complementary, two ideas have to have similarities in concept, justification, or design, and between atheism and feminism, nothing could be further from the truth.
Before I get too far into this, I want to make it clear that I will be using multiple senses of the word atheism throughout this video. This will be obvious to most of you from the context of what I'm saying, but bitter experience tells me that it will not be so obvious to a few of you. So before you post an angry comment presuming to inform me that atheism means not believing in gods and that's all it means, let me say that I agree with the first half of that statement, but also remind you that not everyone uses the term to mean that and only that.
And again, we have a problem with that idea. Atheism does mean the lack of belief in gods, and that's all that it means. If people use the term to mean other things, then they're using the term incorrectly. That's why rational discussions start off with a definition of terms, how you are going to use these terms in your argument. If you're going to just throw away single definitions and just use the words to mean whatever you want them to mean at the time, then you're doing something seriously wrong, but as we shall see, doing things wrong is what Steve Shives is all about.
Atheism can also refer to the community of atheists or the body of work produced by that community.
No, a group of people who profess atheism are not, in and of themselves, atheism. They are atheists. Likewise, the body of work produced by atheists are not representative of atheism, as atheists do many things that have nothing whatsoever to do with atheism, and therefore have nothing to do with atheism or atheist ideals. I know quite a few authors who happen to be atheists, yet have never written a book remotely concerned with atheism. These people do not represent atheism in any way, shape, or form.
It's totally legitimate to notice trends within that community or body of work and to propose that something be done to change those trends that I find troubling.
Sure, you're welcome to recommend anything that you want for any group of people that you want. That doesn't mean that what you're recommending has anything whatsoever to do with atheism.
I'm not proposing that we redefine what atheism means, and I'm not suggesting that people who disagree with me about stuff are not authentic atheists. Okay?
And that's perfectly fine. It isn't like you have the ability to declare that anyone who disagrees with you isn't an atheist anyhow. You simply lack the power and certainly lack the credibility to do so.
Good. Now I'm going to turn into another shot to disguise a jump cut. Hey. As I was saying, given the fact that both atheists and advocates for the rights of women have historically been oppressed by organized religion, and also given the fact that modern atheism has largely rejected other regressive attitudes traditionally promoted by religious fundamentalism, like hostility to science and modern medicine, or overt prejudice against LGBT people, you might think that atheism and feminism would be the strongest of allies. And in the minds of many atheists and many feminists, they are. Thanks to the internet, I have a fairly large circle of friends and acquaintances who, like me, identify as both atheist and feminist, and find that the two fit together quite neatly.
But you will note that there are a large number of atheists who reject the ideas of feminism, especially the kind of radical third and fourth wave feminism that exists in places like YouTube, Tumblr, and Twitter as irrational, hate-filled, and, to use your word, regressive. The idea that you've found a bunch of people online to support your particular ideas, that's not particularly impressive. Now, I've told this story before, but a very, very long time ago, I was tangentially involved in furry fandom. I was on the convention committee for the very first furry convention, conference, and this was way before it turned into the perversion cesspool that it eventually became, but as that started to happen, the internet was also becoming a big thing, and a lot of these people who actually thought they were animals trapped in human bodies, people who enjoyed having sex with our barnyard friends, those people who had always felt isolated and alone, they started to find small communities of others like them online, where once they might have been the only person who liked to hump a gazelle in 1,000 miles, now they could find hundreds or thousands of people who liked humping gazelle, and that made them feel not only not alone, but some semblance of normal. You have to remember that the primary factor for groups like pedophiles and child pornographers is being online, because you can find any group of people that like any bizarre thing under the sun. Just because you found people who think like you doesn't make your thought processes normal or worthwhile.
My friends and I aren't alone. Voices supportive of feminism are everywhere in the atheist community. Unfortunately, there is also a faction within atheism that is aggressively hostile toward women in general and outspoken feminists in particular. This faction is most active here on YouTube. Within it are several of the most subscribed to atheist channels. These regularly feature videos attacking feminists, spreading misinformation about feminism, and attempting to undermine efforts to address problems of importance to feminists, such as sexual assault or the wage gap.
But you note that these are the most popular and most subscribed to atheist channels, which would suggest to me that they represent more atheists than your own side does. Collectively, they get more hits, they get more subscriptions than your side. Now that ought to tell you something about the popularity of atheism and feminism together. But again, I have to point out that even if this were the case, atheism and feminism have nothing whatsoever to do with each other, except that some people who identify as atheists also identify as feminists. Many, as you note, do not. You also have to realize that many of these channels and these videos spend a great deal of time rationally and critically evaluating the claims made by feminists and finding them absurdly lacking in credibility. A lot of things that online feminists have to say are complete and utter bullshit, like the aforementioned wage gap, which simply doesn't exist in any meaningful way when you do an actual apples-to-apples comparison. But instead of acting in a rational manner when faced with these facts, you get many feminists who react entirely emotionally, very much like the religious, and there's not really much of a surprise there.
Beyond that, their supporters eagerly join the effort, inundating comment sections with insults, pedantic demands for evidence of even mundane and uncontroversial claims, and childish declarations that they have been pwned or wrecked. Commenters of this sort also like to challenge feminists to debates on behalf of their favorite anti-feminists. Occasionally, especially if the target is a woman, they'll even resort to doxing or threats of physical violence.
I'm sorry, but demands for evidence and debate, that's how science is done and how rational people operate. That feminists by and large refuse to do these things says a lot about their character, or lack thereof. And doxing? That's been a common feminist tactic for as long as their online community has existed. It was commonplace in the radical left Atheism Plus community, where their enemies were routinely doxed, where they attempted to get their detractors fired from their jobs, and where they routinely issued physical threats. Dying in a fire was a common answer to anyone who dared question the radical feminist echo chamber. Steve, you need to go look in the mirror because your side is far more guilty of wrongdoing here than anyone else.
The high-profile anti-feminist YouTubers don't directly instigate these actions of their followers, but they don't seem all that concerned with them either, despite these sorts of things being done in their names by self-professed fans of theirs all the time.
And that means what? If they're not commanding people to do it, if they're not doing it themselves, then they have no responsibility for those who take it on themselves to do it. In fact, a lot of these YouTube producers actively tell people not to do anything negative, something that I've yet to see from the feminist side. People are only responsible for themselves. Maybe you need to figure that out.
There are two major results of this. First, feminists, especially women, either stop participating in the YouTube atheist community or decide not to start. And second, the atheist community as a whole is perceived by those outside of it as being a place where sexism and misogyny are not merely tolerated, but rewarded. It seems to me that both of these results are undesirable.
Then maybe these women producers need to grow a spine. Here's a news flash for you, Steve. Every single content provider online has to put up with this stuff. All of them. Men and women, black and white, gay and straight, religious and non-religious, all of us have to deal with trolls. Those of us who can, remain online. Those who cannot, run away. Now, I'm not going to argue that this is a good thing. I think we'd all agree that if the trolls would just go away, the world would be a better place, but that's just not the world that we live in, and mature people deal with the world that is, not the world that they wish was. As all three, a podcaster, a YouTube content creator, and a blogger, I put up with these things every single day. I put up with death threats. I put up with people calling me names. I put up with all of it, and it hasn't driven me away yet. So what makes these women so weak? Maybe that's the question that you ought to be asking.
One of the most damaging effects wrought on society by religion has been the subjugation of women. For centuries, we've been told that women are unfit for leadership, ought to be kept in narrow gender roles as wives and mothers, and are undeserving of autonomy and generally less worthy than men. Many atheists are quick to speak out against the religious oppression of women today, whether it's found here in the West or in other parts of the world.
Well, not so much. At least not if it's Muslims doing the oppressing. You know, there's a lot of self-identified feminist liberals out there who have taken Islam under their wing and refuse to criticize anything that Muslims do because it's somehow racist. But I'm going to let you in on a little secret. Islam isn't a race. It's a religion. There are Muslims of all racial groups. There are Arabic Muslims, there are black Muslims, there's white Muslims, there's Asian Muslims. In fact, some of the biggest Muslim populations out there are in the Philippines. But, you know, just trying to point out reality to a liberal, you know you're in for a fight.
But if we're going to cite the mistreatment of women as a point against religion, shouldn't we be vigilant about identifying and confronting the mistreatment of women in our own communities? Religious oppression of women can be easy to spot. Churches have rules banning women from certain roles, imposing rigid standards of dress and conduct, establishing gender-segregated worship services, and so on. Oppression of women in the YouTube atheist community is not nearly so formal. Nowhere is it codified that women should not be allowed to speak freely. But the hostility toward feminism, the petulant complaining in response to attempts to address sexism, and the outright withering abuse that greets women in this community all add up to send an unmistakable message. You and your point of view are not welcome here.
But Steve, you're conflating two things. Now, I'm not at all surprised that you're so blinded by your ideology that you can't tell the difference, but I just have to point this out. Nobody is telling women that they cannot participate on YouTube. There are millions of women uploading millions of videos every single day. What people are disagreeing with isn't women. It's feminism. People don't dislike women. They dislike feminism. There is a difference. Figure it out.
Many atheists also identify as humanists, or at least share many key humanist values. But it seems to me that no humanist worthy of the label would tolerate women being mistreated in their community. Women being human, last I checked. Humanism and feminism don't stand in opposition to each other, and anyone who thinks they do has misunderstood at least one, and probably both, of those things.
Well, I don't identify as a humanist. I'm a human. That's all I need. But I think the person who has mistaken ideas about those things is you. If feminism was actually about equality for all, as lots of people repeatedly claim, they'd actually fight for equal rights for everyone regardless of gender. They do not. They ignore everywhere that women have superior rights and call anyone who fights for actual equality for all names. That's why so many of us refer to ourselves as egalitarians. We actually want equal rights for all. We want no superior rights for anyone. We don't care about just men or just women. We don't care about just whites or just blacks. We care about everyone, entirely without regard for their race, creed, skin color, sexual orientation, gender, or anything else. So long as feminists are not that, and YouTube feminists by and large are anything but, we are going to oppose them because they've earned it.
What about the role YouTube atheism's pronounced streak of misogyny plays in how atheism is perceived by non-atheists? Though the anti-feminist YouTubers aren't representative of the broader community, theirs are often among the first voices encountered by people who are curious about atheism. Like most minority groups, atheists are often misrepresented. We need to make sure that the stereotype of an atheist as an angry, condescending male chauvinist is just that. A straw man that doesn't represent the general character of our community.
So you want radical feminists to represent our community? You know, the ones who want to put men in concentration camps and reduce their numbers in society so they can serve as breeding stock? Nah, I don't think so. But here's the thing, Steve. Anyone who wants to know about atheism isn't going to look at a video about feminism or politics or anything of the sort. They're going to look at videos about atheism. Now, I produce content on a variety of subjects. I talk about religion, I talk about politics, I talk about social issues, I talk about atheism. All of my videos are clearly marked so people know what they're getting. If you look at a political video and think that it ought to be about atheism, you're an idiot. In fact, anybody who watches any video or reads any blog post and thinks that it, in and of itself, is fully representative of any social, political, or religious viewpoint, they're a moron. And I guess your audience are made up of morons, and that's kind of telling.
And we don't do that by rounding up the anti-feminists and running them out of town on a rail, as I have occasionally been accused of advocating. We do that by speaking up for ourselves, by making our voices louder and more numerous than theirs. We need to make it clear to them, to ourselves, and to those outside of our community with whom we hope to coexist in freedom and peace and equality, that the anti-feminists, the sexists, the misogynists do not speak for us.
And how's that going for you? You already said earlier that the anti-feminists have more subscribers, get more hits, and are, in general, more vocal and more successful than you are. Maybe you're not the one winning the battle. Maybe your side is losing, and maybe there's a reason for that. You remind me of the religious fanatics who are forever screaming that they're right, everyone is out to get them, and they need to tell the world that their detractors are bad people. No, they're the ones who are bad. They're the ones who are wrong. They're the ones who are losing the fight. They just can't get it through their heads because they're not reacting on an intellectual level. They are entirely emotional in their behavior, and that's not something to be proud of.
To some of you, this may sound like I'm making a mountain out of a molehill. Women aren't being forced to undergo genital mutilation or marry into indentured servitude on YouTube. But if the amount of anti-feminist rhetoric, not to mention the exuberant applause that often greets that rhetoric, is keeping atheist women from having a stronger voice in our community, and it is, isn't that a problem? And if that rhetoric consists not merely of honest, informed disagreement, but straw-manning and demonizing of feminism of the sort that we would never tolerate were it directed at atheism, and it does, shouldn't we be standing against it?
What, you mean all the things that feminists do online? Everything you've just described being done by the anti-feminists are things that I've seen feminists doing themselves. Utter dishonesty, strawmanning, doxing, screaming, threatening, crying. All of this is common among the feminists, but you won't mention any of that. And I wonder why not.
This isn't the first time I've talked about this. I've spoken out strongly in support of feminism numerous times, and it's always incensed a certain portion of those who watched those videos. Some even try to deflect the charge of being anti-feminist by claiming that it's only third-wave feminism that they really have a problem with. In my experience, most people who make such comments demonstrate an understanding of third-wave feminism roughly equivalent to the average young Earth creationist's understanding of the second law of thermodynamics.
So far, you've demonstrated a complete misunderstanding of pretty much everything you've talked about, so I'm not sure how seriously to take anything that you say. But the fact is, I've seen people online taking the arguments of the feminists, for example, the nonsensical gender wage gap, disassembling it, looking at the actual evidence, and proving that it's all a load of crap. There is no question whatsoever that there is no actual gender wage gap in the West. But you don't see feminists being honest about it. You don't see them admitting that they were wrong and refusing to use that rhetoric in the future. They are doing exactly what the creationists do. They ignore any inconvenient facts and keep using the same old tired bullshit over and over and over again because they don't really care about the facts. They only care about the rhetoric. And this is something that impresses you? Seriously?
I've also lost count of how many times I've received indignant comments declaring that though I call myself an atheist, feminism is my true religion. A religion, as any self-professing atheist worth a damn ought to know, is typically defined as a belief system based on divine revelations and dogmatic principles handed down from unquestionable authorities. Anyone who believes that something like a divine revelation is necessary to recognize the ongoing oppression of women, or that feminists are mindless followers of authority, needs to take his head out of his ass.
You know, I've called libertarianism a religion too because it operates in much the same way as religions do. Radical feminism operates the same way. In fact, we saw that with the whole Atheism Plus debacle, where anyone who disagreed with their supreme decrees got booted out of the community lest they interfere with the echo chamber. They put together a Twitter block bot so that the devout will never have to see anything that might disagree with their quasi-religious beliefs. When you're letting someone else decide what you can see and what you cannot see, I don't know how else to describe that but a religion. So tell me, Steve, did you sign up for the Blockbot too? Be honest. Your faith is showing.
Such a worldview is only possible if the perception of the person holding it is clouded by ignorance or warped by unconscious bias. Two conditions that we who fancy ourselves skeptics strive to correct, do we not?
But feminism and skepticism do not play well together. If they did, feminists would stop using all the absurd claims that they make, claims that have already been proven completely and totally wrong. But they aren't skeptical of anything that their side fancies. Oh, it's the patriarchy. Sure, there's no evidence that the patriarchy actually exists, but they're sure it does anyhow. That said, though, I want to make something clear. Just because you are skeptical of one class of things in your life, that doesn't make you a skeptic. A skeptic is someone who is skeptical of everything without exception. They question the things that feminism says. They question the things that science says. They question the things that religion says. Heck, they question the things their own doctors tell them. I once had a doctor who desperately tried to turn me into a vegetarian. He gave me a movie to watch that said I should cut all the meat out of my diet. Of course, I immediately went and did my own research and found that most people considered the movie to be a complete fraud. The claims presented were specious at best and unsupported by the majority of credible science. I rejected his recommendation and found myself another doctor. That's called being a skeptic. Steve, my friend, you are nowhere remotely close to being a skeptic.
I've even suggested that the atheist movement would be better off if it adopted an approach more like that of intersectional feminism, which seeks to understand how different forms of discrimination overlap and amplify each other. What good is an atheist movement that primarily concerns itself with the most privileged members of the atheist community and treats women, people of color, and LGBT folk as afterthoughts?
An atheist movement, if one actually exists, which I don't think it does, it isn't concerned with the gender, sexual orientation, or race of its members at all. It's only concerned with the promotion of atheism and the rejection of religion. That's what atheism is, after all.
The answer I get most often from people who don't like this suggestion, and to be clear, there are plenty of my fellow atheists who agree with me and are, in fact, way ahead of me on this, is that I'm trying to make atheism into an exclusive club, where only atheists who also agree with me on other stuff that isn't directly related to atheism are welcome. This objection misses the point of intersectionality, which encourages diversity by highlighting issues of concern to people who are already in our community but are often overlooked. An intersectional atheist would necessarily be someone who wants the movement to be even broader and more inclusive than it already is, valuing the contributions of a wide variety of people with a wide variety of ideas.
And that's stupid. The only thing that matters to an atheist community is whether or not its members are atheists. Beyond that, it is irrelevant. This is exactly why Atheism Plus failed. They tried to do exactly what Steve is describing. Instead of being about atheism, about challenging the power and influence that religion has on society, they only cared about liberal social causes, and anyone who wasn't liberal enough for them, who wasn't exactly the right kind of liberal, got thrown out of their exclusive club. This isn't inclusivity. This is exactly the opposite. This is also why Atheism Plus imploded. Everyone was constantly attacking everyone else over their level of ideological purity. This has been tried, Steve. It failed. Figure it out.
But what about the charge that feminism and atheism just don't belong together? Perhaps, to appropriate a phrase from a famous atheist who was not afraid to call out sexism when he saw it, they are simply non-overlapping magisteria. I wish that more of the people who complained about what they see as an unwelcome injection of feminism into atheism felt the same way about the infusion of misogyny into it. Because the truth is, I wouldn't be so keen to talk about feminism in the context of the atheist community if the atheist community, particularly here on YouTube, were not so tolerant of the awful, backwards attitudes toward women displayed by some of its most prominent members.
That's because atheism and feminism do not go together, just like atheism and playing baseball don't go together. They are two entirely different belief systems. Believe it or not, you can be both an atheist and a feminist and a stamp collector and a baseball player. All of these are completely different activities in which you can engage with completely different sets of people. I don't have to seek out only people who share every single one of my interests. You can go and spend time with your friends who are stamp collectors and not give a damn if they're religious or not. You can go and play baseball with a team and not care what their ideological positions on feminism might be. Every single person in your life does not have to walk in ideological lockstep with you. If you think that they do, I can guarantee that you'll have a very, very, very tiny group of friends and your intellectual positions will never be challenged. And I'm sure that's what you want, the same way that crazy liberal college students want speech codes and trigger words so that they never actually have to have their pre-existing ideas challenged. Crawling into these tiny little echo chambers so that you never hear anything that disagrees with you. It's not good for you, Steve. You need to figure this out. It's very bad for your intellectual growth. Maybe that explains feminists.
Why are misogyny and anti-feminism regarded as things we just have to accept as an unavoidable part of an ideologically diverse community, but feminism is regarded as unwarranted and intrusive? Angry, hateful, ignorant, reactionary anti-feminist rhetoric? Well, you might not agree with it, but we wouldn't want those who do agree with it to feel unwelcome in our community. And as for the women who have fled our community or never came within a mile of it in the first place because of those who spew and praise such rhetoric, well, you know what? To hell with them. I guess they're just not as good at tolerating disagreement as the rest of us are. Now shut the fuck up, SJW, is, I believe, how the rest of that goes.
Or they don't need a community to be non-religious. They don't need something all-encompassing to call home where their precious, overly emotional beliefs are never challenged, their ideas are never disagreed with, and their holy religious faith is never disturbed. That's not what skeptics want, Steve. Skeptics want their positions constantly challenged. How else are they going to know if the positions they hold are true or false if they never have to reevaluate them? But you people are terrified of that. You don't want to have to think about the things that you already believe. You want to live in your own little world where everything you believe is shared by everyone you meet so that you never have to get that uncomfortable feeling that maybe, just maybe, you don't have it quite right.
Women are not the only demographic to be marginalized and mistreated in our community, and particularly here on YouTube. People of color and LGBT folk, among others, struggle for equal time in atheist circles just as they do in other communities and in society in general.
How exactly do they do that? Does YouTube restrict their ability to upload videos? You'd have to show me in YouTube's terms of service that women, gay people, and black people can't just upload anything they want. I will await your evidence for your claims, but I suspect it's going to be a very, very long wait.
I've chosen to focus on the mistreatment of women because, in my opinion, that problem is the most obvious and the most tacitly condoned. But that certainly doesn't mean there aren't other rooms in this house long overdue for a cleaning. Problems like the one I've spent this video discussing are not unique to YouTube atheism or to atheism as a social movement. All major human rights movements have struggled with them, including feminism, which has a long and well-documented history of centering itself on white women and neglecting women of color. The question we now face as atheists is, will we learn from the mistakes of the great social movements like feminism that came before us? Will we strive to empower the marginalized members of our community? Or will we continue to stand by and silently consent while ignorant reactionary bullies push them further and further into the margins?
Wait a minute. There you go describing Atheism Plus again, which is exactly what happened there. They had a little club. They kicked out anyone who didn't embrace their ideological purity. They insulted anyone who disagreed with them. They doxed them. They tried to get them fired from their jobs. They tried to get conventions to keep them out so that only the religiously pure could attend, etc. Like I said, that's already been tried and it failed entirely. You're trying for an atheist movement that isn't actually about atheism. It's about social justice. Something tells me you entirely misunderstand what atheism is. You're trying to stack all of your interests under a common label. You're trying to avoid ever spending any time with anyone who doesn't fit into all of your ideological checkboxes. That's an unrealistic expectation, Steve. If you think that's how the world works, that you get to surround yourself with only people who belong in your tiny little echo chamber, then it's no wonder that you and your ilk are so completely screwed up.
I spent too many years standing by as women were demeaned, abused, and browbeaten by some of my fellow atheists on YouTube and their fans. It's embarrassing, it's indefensible, it harms us as individuals and as a community, and it is long past time that we put a stop to it.
Then if you have individual examples that you don't like, engage them in debate. Point out your areas of disagreement and find common ground. And if you can't find common ground, avoid spending time with them. Don't watch their videos, don't read their blog posts, don't look at their comments. Nobody forces you to do anything. But the one thing that you can't do, the one thing that you have no right and no ability to do, is censor people that you don't like. You don't get to shut people up that you don't like because you disagree with what they're saying. That's exactly what the religious have done for centuries, arresting, beating, and murdering the so-called heretics, burning their books, destroying their message for no other reason than they didn't like it. It cast you and the YouTube feminists in exactly the role that you claim to disagree with. Funny how that happens, isn't it?
This is a problem throughout our community, but it is especially pronounced here on YouTube. We can do something about it by making our voices heard, by not only speaking out against sexism and misogyny, but by supporting atheist channels like the ones whose names are now on the screen and which are also linked in the description box of this video. This is by no means a comprehensive list. Some of these channels feature outspoken feminist content, Some hardly ever mention the subject, but they all promote science, reason, humanism, and secularism without denigrating women and demonizing feminists. And they, and many others like them who aren't listed, deserve our attention and our support. Thanks for watching.
Yet many of the channels listed outrightly denigrate anyone who dares disagree with radical feminist dogma. It's a purity list, nothing more. It keeps people from ever having to hear anything that disagrees with their close-held feminist faith. Instead of looking at YouTube and making your own decisions about what you want to hear and what you don't, what you want to see and what you don't, who appeals to you and who doesn't, you ought to support these people and keep your ideological purity clean. Does this strike anyone as skeptical? Does this strike anyone as being able to think for yourself and make your own decisions? Of course not, but that's not what they want. They want unquestioned obedience to the radical feminist cause. They want absolute support for leftist beliefs. Don't use your mind. Don't think for yourself. And whatever you do, don't you dare ever question the virtual feminist scripture. You might get yourself excommunicated from the liberal church, and you wouldn't want that, would you? So there you have it. That's really why I find it so hard to take any of this leftist feminist crap at all seriously. Yes, I want everyone to be equal. Everyone. And I want everyone to have equal rights. Everyone. That means we treat men and women the same in every possible circumstance. Where it isn't possible for biological reasons, we find ways to treat them both equivalently. Men don't get to stop women from having an abortion, but where women get to opt out of an unwanted pregnancy, so do men. We treat people of all races the same in every possible circumstance. Where it isn't possible for biological reasons, we find ways to treat them all equivalently. We can't pretend that some ethnic groups don't have a higher incidence of certain diseases. I keep seeing liberals saying that we should never ever mention things like sickle cell anemia in relation to black people. But it's a goddamn fact that it strikes some people in some ethnic groups more often than it does in others. And it's not racist to point that out. People need to deal with the reality that we have, not the reality they wish existed. I wish people would spend more time doing that and we wouldn't have such a disaster clusterfuck online today. I know this was a bit longer than normal, but I felt this was important to respond to in a timely manner. Let me know what you thought in the comments below. Unlike lots of feminists on YouTube, I don't close comments and I don't censor anyone. I'm not afraid of disagreement and I respond to most comments that I get. Spread the word, let everyone know, and make sure you subscribe to the channel. I seem to have plateaued a bit recently and want to make sure things keep growing. Thanks again for spending some time with me. I hope you enjoyed it and we'll come back again soon.